Mr. David struggled with literacy in primary school, but with support from his parents, he gained a place at Technical College. Despite all his efforts, he was the boy who scored only fair for his academic work. On leaving school, his career's master dispatched him to the steelworks, although he really wanted to work with people. Building on his hard-earned technical skills, David became a technician at the University of Sheffield. With the encouragement of his wife, Angela, he was appointed to have a technical sales position at Honeywell Controls. Combining his technical and people skills to excellent effect, he rose to regional sales manager and received many awards for his work. In 2012, David presented his very first talk on his dyslexia journey, and he has since contributed at international conferences in the UK, in New Zealand, Asia. In his talk, David will present some of the insights gained from his many years of involvement in the field of dyslexia, driven by his own personal experience of failure in school, leading into success in adult life. So how is it like striving for success against the odds with undiagnosed dyslexia? I'm very curious to find out about it. So now let us put our hands together for Mr. David Fawcett.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Before I start talking about my life with dyslexia, I wanted to show you this picture. This is one of my masterpieces. I say it's one of my masterpieces because it started its life as a masterpiece a century ago, painted by Paul Cézanne. And it's one or two of my paintings. I can't talk about paintings on this talk, but perhaps another time. One or two of them are taken from actual paintings. So this is not Paul Cézanne's, it's my masterpiece. So let's move on. Okay. I've already said, have I, that I'm delighted to be here, and I want to thank the Dyslexia Association of Singapore for inviting me. I've been here for the last 5 years, but not as a speaker, supporting my wife, Angela Fawcett, who gave her talk this morning. My only qualification for being here, I have no academic qualifications whatsoever being dyslexic, is that I am dyslexic. And I can tell you, the non-dyslexic people amongst you, how it feels to be dyslexic at school, in work, and beyond work, when I did my painting. Many, many times I've wanted to speak up. Not here in Singapore, because there's a tremendous knowledge about, and we've heard all day today about how people feel about dyslexia, how they know what it is. But in other countries, dare I say the States, people, supposedly experts, have spoken to an audience, and I have felt they have really no idea how it feels to be dyslexic. We all know the feeling you get in the pit of your stomach on a day when you've got an exam, or on a day when you've got a job interview, something that's really going to tax us. Well, as a dyslexic child at school, during those 12 years at school, I had that sinking feeling every day because I was a child who was failing. And also in my working career, I had that awful feeling, especially on a Sunday night, not just in the morning, but Sunday night when you know you've got a whole week of being taxed. So it's an awful story that I've got, but it will get better. It will get better. This is a chart that Angela produced, which shows our son Matt compared with me. Matt was diagnosed as a child. Can you all hear me? As a child at 5.5, and I was diagnosed at 55. We both have a similar IQ level in the superior range. Incredibly for me, because I was always the one that wasn't clever. There were people around me at school that were clever, but I wasn't one of those people. But with an IQ in the superior range, well, I seem to have some strengths. I got no support at all at school, and I struggled. Our son Matt did get some support. Should I be pointing at these, or can you see them? The highest qualification I got was a vocational one, a City and Guilds. I don't know whether you have those in Singapore, but it's a vocational qualification. I got it to advanced level, but it's not an academic qualification. Our son Matt got a really good degree, a 2-1 in politics at a good university in the UK. My reading is slow. And mainly the newspaper. Our son Matt, his reading is good and wide-ranging. He reads lots of books. I don't read many books myself. My spelling is shaky and uncertain, and so is Matthew's. Most dyslexic people struggle with spelling. And my career, as you just heard, was in sales and sales management. And our son is saving the world. He is totally fulfilled in the work that he's doing. Unlike me in my sales, whilst I was successful, it was hardly fulfilling. My views on dyslexia, these are not Angela's, but mine. It's a hidden condition. I had, all my life, had to hide my shortcomings, my slowness, disorganization, and try to hope that I wasn't going to be discovered as being someone that really couldn't hack it at school or at work. Until I got my surprise diagnosis. Now, the diagnosis of dyslexia wasn't a surprise. By 55, our son was then, how old? I don't know, but he'd gone through school, 20-odd. And all that we'd learned about dyslexia, we knew applied to me. The surprise was that there was a plus, that I had strengths. I wasn't weak in all of these. Well, I was weak in all the subjects at school. This is the awful thing about schools. They test you in maths and spelling and writing and reading, and you can't do them. They don't test you in other things. So you fail at everything. But, so should we label children? Of course we should. Label them dyslexic and give them help, and we've seen a lot about the help that can be given places like the DAS. So a diagnosis, not just dyslexic, send in the next child, but dyslexic, but you have all these strengths. You're a special child. You can do these things. Is a huge boost to confidence. So let's get back to me, and this is my first school. You can see what a miserable Victorian building it is, and it's a horrible, horrible, let's move on from that school. There, I was a little boy lost. I was never sure where I was supposed to be. This is how dyslexic people are. So I would latch on to friends who knew where the non-dyslexic people knew where they were supposed to be, and so they would guide me. Like most children, I wanted to please, and I wanted to do well at school. There was something I couldn't achieve. I was struggling with everything. Some dyslexic children become angry at school. Many of you, DAS people, will remember Robin Mosley. And Robin is dyslexic, and he would talk about being angry at being at school and not being treated the way he should be treated. But I wasn't angry, I was miserable. I told you it was going to be a miserable talk, didn't I? I knew it was my fault. I was getting things wrong and failing. Who else was to blame? It was me. And so here we are. Look, I am sorry that it's still a miserable talk. It will get better. So what is dyslexia? There's no cure, but there are strategies that you can that will enable you to function normally. Is it a reading problem? Just a reading problem? Well, some people say it's much, much more than a reading problem. Angela would. And I would agree. It is. And then imagine being at school with phonics and all day struggling with something called consonant clusters. What's a consonant? And blending. These are things that they talk about in America a lot, and it's supposed to help children with their reading. But imagine coming home after struggling all day with those things, and your mum saying, "Oh, come in, we've got a tutor that's going to help you with your reading." And this tutor says, "Hello, David. This evening we're going to do some consonant clusters." And your heart sinks. It means that you're going to fail again. And what I've said here, and I think is very, very true, constant failure erodes any fragile confidence that a dyslexic child manages to muster, to the point where they won't even try. Come along, boy, you could do it yesterday. What is it? You won't even try. So what can teachers do? Are there lots of teachers here? Yes. Put your hands up, teachers. Yes, here we are. Oh, yes, lots of well, you can play word games, discuss the derivation of words, their origins, meanings, and spellings, because it's all joined together. And dyslexic people are interested in that story of words and spellings and how they will all go together. So that's something which really good teachers, I understand now, actually do. And what about a number square for maths? What are 6 sevens? Come along. You knew it yesterday. What are 6 sevens? Well, try 7 sixes then. Come along. And a dyslexic child won't know, and even if they do know, they daren't say it because they may well be wrong. So a number square, with numbers along the top and down the side, will show what 6 sevens are, and the child will always know because it's there. They don't have to have this sinking feeling, it's there. And a number square isn't cheating. Given a number square, a child that's struggling with their maths will learn much, much quicker having the answer there. Dyslexic people need explicit explanation often. And because it's no good saying it once, it needs to be repeated. It's part of the problem. They can't even start without an explanation of what it is they're supposed to be doing. If left in the dark, they will fail. I really believe teachers don't want children to fail. but as a dyslexic child, you can feel as if they do. They're not on your side. What really helps is a champion, someone that cares for you, someone that thinks you're special. And all children, everyone is special, aren't they? And if that champion is a teacher, it's very, very powerful. At school, it wasn't a teacher, it was my parents that were my champions, and they were very, very good. And I was happy at home and during the holidays. So I told you it was going to get better, didn't I? It was only at school I was miserable. So they would support me with timetables and spellings. They'd indulge me in fun play. We'd have days out. We'd go to Sherwood Forest. And that was only an hour from where we live in Sheffield, and where we still live there. And this is where Robin Hood, do you all know the story of Robin Hood? So how exciting that was to be taken there. They would teach me the names of the butterflies. And we had butterflies in the UK before the global warming crisis and the pollution and everything. I would know their names, and it was just wonderful. They weren't rich. We weren't probably as poor as the poor people that Geeta was talking about this morning in Singapore, but they did need to struggle to send me to a private school just for 1 year because I failed the 11 plus exam in the UK, which we had then, rather like the exam that people take in Singapore around 11, and it's an all-important exam. It was in the UK, and I failed. So they sent me to the Oakwood Collegiate school, and the first thing I noticed there, it's a much nicer school, the lunches were actually edible. It was lovely. The classes were smaller, and it's getting better, this talk. The teachers were inspirational, and it was a very pleasant environment. They prepared us during that year for the entrance examination for the Central Technical School in Sheffield, and only 5% of boys passed this at 13. But most Oakwood boys gained entry to the Central Technical School. There it is in all its grandeur. It's now a hotel in the centre of Sheffield. It was a traditional hard school with merit points and demerit points, which I would quickly pick up. And they administered the cane then, in those days. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I'm happy to say they don't administer the cane for children in the UK anymore, as indeed they don't in Singapore, I understand. There was humiliation there for me, because I was still failing. Get in the bin, Fawcett. You're rubbish. So I had to stand in the waste bin with the paper and the orange peel and feel awful. The maths master would say, "Wait until you get those shovels in your hands." He thought we were all going to be navvies, weren't going to get a decent job. I found it very hard there, but I managed just to keep up. They began to talk about me as a late developer. I think this happens with undiagnosed dyslexics, if they manage to get to grips with it and don't finish up in prison. I gained, we didn't take O-levels, but we did take a diploma, the Central Technical School diploma, and it was, and I got a second class. You could get a first class if you were really good, or a second or a third, or you failed. So I didn't do too badly, and it gave me the equivalent of 5 O-levels, which meant I could go on to further education without having to do the foundation course. But before I left school, I saw the careers master. "Come in, boy," he said. "Sit down. Tell me what your interests are. We'll see what sort of work you could do." "Well, I'm interested in people, sir, and politics, and I like art and music. You see, I didn't want to be an engineering apprentice. Sheffield is a big steel centre in the UK. But unbeknown to me, companies, engineering organisations would send a list. They'd say, please send us 20 engineering apprentices, because they'd all got a grounding in the Central Technical School. His solution to my plea to work with people was go to Brown Bailey Engineering apprentice, report there on Monday. Well, I didn't. My father was a development engineer at Firth Browns, a huge organisation, and he got me a job, not a job, he got me an interview for a job in the Pyro Lab, a laboratory, where I would wear a white coat and probably be, yes, and enjoy it. It was something I could do. I didn't want to wear a blue overall. So I went for the interview and I got the job. Here we are, the Brown Firth Research Laboratory. It's now the English Pewter Company. And that was the start of 4 years working in the steelworks. Like Dante's Inferno. Steelworks were just like cathedrals filled with fire and smoke. Amazing place. I was just 16 years old in there. And there was some disillusionment because on the first day, I was given a brown smock to wear and not the white coat that I'd really looked forward to wearing. But they did send me to day release to Technical College. 2 nights I had to go night school studying automatic control, which was quite interesting. But I enrolled for 2 extra nights at night school, one doing art and one doing pottery. And I thought I would meet people like myself, people that I enjoyed meeting. Indeed, after the first year, Angela joined, enrolled for the pottery class. And we became very good friends. We fell in love. And we eventually got married. And that's another different story that I can tell you if I'm invited again. I progressed then to the instrument room from the laboratory, where I would maintain temperature measurement instrumentation, electromechanical things, quite interesting, but some of them were really very, very good. The American ones, the Honeywell ones, were the Rolls-Royce of controls, absolutely brilliant. Anyway, I completed my City and Guilds advanced course, and I was keen to learn more about electronics. And so I went to Sheffield University. Has it come up? Yes. I went to Sheffield University not as a student. Remember, I wasn't clever. I didn't have any qualifications, but I went as a technician. And there I did get to wear a white coat. I learned the terminology, which was very useful to me later in life, of all the little bits and pieces, the resistors and capacitors and things. But the pay wasn't very good. We needed money. We wanted to start a family. And suddenly there was a job advertised for an inside sales engineer at Honeywell, the very organization that I'd so admired in the steelworks. Dare I apply for Honeywell? Look, there's the logo, huge American corporation, to sell controls that I knew about, but I couldn't. I was poor at writing and spelling, and I had little confidence, especially in a selling role. And this is where Angela stepped in. She became my champion, and she still is. You can do it, she said. They'll really like you. I applied and I got an interview, much to my surprise, but I thought I'm never going to fool them. I wasn't very good at anything, and would I be able to sell? Just be yourself, they'll love you, said Angela. Well, I went along and I got it, and I needn't have worried. they had a great training program. My mentor then, a guy called John Hunt, saw some potential in me, and he sent me for a 6-week training course at head office. He said, "You're from Sheffield. You must be your best. You must be the best there. They'll give you a daily test every morning. And if you look at the notes the previous night and make sure you learn them, then you'll do pretty well." In fact, I came out top over the whole course. The first time in my life. Not bad for someone that's not clever. And it taught me an important lesson that anything is possible for anyone. Finish? I can't finish. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm not looking at you. So I'm going to have to jump on. Here we are. Oh goodness, I've hardly started. All the sort of strategies I employed, and let me come to all of these strategies. And where's the? Here's me doing well. I spent. Look, here's my award. The best award that anyone could get in Honeywell was the President's Club Award. I got it twice. And the best thing I did was retrieve business from a customer that was going to competition. And I will just say this, if I may. These are my dyslexic strengths. And they're not just mine, they're everyone's dyslexic strengths. And looking back, this is how I did achieve some success. Looking at the big picture, we hear all the time about dyslexics, but anticipating disaster. One of my managers saw that I could do this, not by something magical, but by just being able to see the big picture and seeing where things were going wrong. And so this is why you need a dyslexic person on the team, because they can see what's happening. And teamwork, creativity, we all know about, and optimism and positivity. And I do need to just plug this book by Rod Nicholson, Positive Dyslexia, which really tells you how I achieved some success and what the difficulties were. So my take-home message is that you can achieve with dyslexia even without a diagnosis. But I had to stop work at 58. I took early retirement because it was all becoming too much for me, and became an artist, and you saw one of my pictures. And I'm sure that our son Matthew will continue his work through his 40s, 50s, 60s, and well into his 70s, just like his mother, because he is not only achieving, but being fulfilled, which is something that didn't happen to me in what was really a successful business life. But do you know what? I am now enjoying a fulfilled life, not just with painting and pottery and my weekly politics discussion group, but in sitting next to Angela in the all-party parliamentary group in the UK with special educational needs. And in supporting Angela in the superb work that she does here at the DAS and across the world. Thank you.